welcome to the WiSP Sports Desk with me, Chris Stafford, alongside Nancy Gillen. This is Season 3, Episode 44. We've just got, 2 more shows to go to wrap up the year, Nancy.
I know, it's amazing. Just how fast this year has gone. It's been an incredible year for women's sport. So, I think we'll always look back on 2021 as one of the best years for women's sports in recent times.
Yeah, I think what with the Olympics, with the, emerging after COVID as well, and there's been a lot of terrific stories and records broken and a lot of non-Olympic sports too, that have really caught our eye this year. It's going to be fun to wrap it all up in a couple of weeks' time, which we will do before we take our break over the holidays, and then we'll resume again in January. But talking about awards, we've got awards system. We're right in the middle of January, December, January being the awards season. So we've got some of that coming up later in the show. But we're going to begin, of course, with skiing because it is winter sports season, right? And this all played out this past weekend with the Lake Louise Super G. There were 2 Super Gs and downhill, and it was an extraordinary weekend for the Italian Sofia Goggia. She actually scored a hat trick, which has only been done twice before by Katja Seisinger, the German skier, back in 1997, and Lindsey Vonn did it 3 times in 2011, 12, and 15, which is not too surprising because this was one of Lindsay's favourite tracks. But this weekend belonged to Sofia Goggia, and she won, as I said, the first Super G. She beat Breezy Johnson, who, if you remember last week, Nancy, when Peggy Shim was on the show to talk about Killington, she said we need to look out for Breezy Johnson because Breezy, the American, was on really good form. So that proved to be true because she finished second in that first Super G, with the Austrian Merjan Puckner finished third, and then Breezy was again second to Sofia in the second Super G. So it was a pretty exciting weekend for the Americans too, to see her coming through as their leading skier. And then in the downhill, another Super G. Sorry, I was telling you this. The downhill. That was Sofia, and then Breezy, and then Merjan Puckner. And then in the Super G, the second Super G, one of my favourite skiers, full disclosure, Lara Gut-Behrami, the Swiss skier, she finished second to Sofia, with again the Austrian Merjan Puckner in third place. So it was a tremendous weekend for Sofia Goggia. They all move over to St Moritz now. It's the traditional skiing weekend in St Moritz in Switzerland coming up. So looking forward to that. But this bodes well for the Olympics, Nancy, with Sofia Goggia. She's known for her downhill and Super G. She's really, stamped her card, hasn't she, for the Olympics in Beijing?
Yeah, I think that's why this year's World Cup has a bit more significance than others because, like you said, you've got the Olympics in February. So it's kind of build up to that and like an opportunity to get into a good run of form in time for the games. So she's, like you said, she's kind of making herself one to watch for Beijing in February.
Yeah, and another one to watch for Beijing is Kaillie Humphries, now the American bobsledder. And I can say she's an American now because she just got her citizenship. And you remember we talked about this when Peggy was on the show because we were hoping to get some news pretty soon of that happening and of that coming through so that she could represent the US before the deadline for Beijing. And that happened last week. And it was a busy week for Kaillie because she got her qualifying runs in Altenburg in Germany. She won the bobsled. She got her qualifying runs on the Tuesday. She flew to LA on the Wednesday to be sworn in as an American citizen on the Thursday, and then turned around and headed back to Germany that afternoon to compete in the weekend and that weekend, and that's where she won. So I don't know if she knew what time zone she was on, but it seemed not to matter when she got into that bobsled and celebrated her first win as an American citizen.
Yeah, I mean, that's such an incredible story. And I think almost with, COVID and everything happening virtually, you would have wondered, could it maybe have happened like over Zoom instead, so she didn't have to make a journey? But it obviously had absolutely no impact on her performance. And yeah, I'm sure she'd be relieved that's all sorted now for the Olympics. Yeah,
that's extraordinary. So she can continue to focus on her training preparation there for Beijing. So congrats to Kaillie. Now, also this past 2 weekends, you remember the Dubai Rugby Sevens were taking place, Nancy. That was over 2 weekends. And I don't know if you noticed, but the US beat GB this weekend.
I did see that, yeah. Yeah, that was a good result for the US, yeah.
Yeah, it really was. They actually had a good 2 weeks, all in all. They finished fifth in overall. Australia were just impossible to beat. They led the table at the end. But it was a really good weekend for our two favourite Rugby Sevens players, Naya and Ilona Maher. They had a tremendous tournament, scoring tries, both of them scoring a few tries. Naya, actually, no. So Lowe got a hat-trick in one game over this past weekend. But then I think the highlight of this past weekend's tournament was the one when the US were playing Ireland, and Naya had a save like no other, sprinting across the pitch. You saw that video to save that try.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I think anyone that hasn't watched it needs to look it up on Twitter and watch it, because, yeah, Naya's pace is just unbelievable.
Extraordinary. It's actually on our Facebook page. You can find it on our Facebook page. Just go to WiSP Sports on Facebook, and I've posted it there because it's an extraordinary sprint. I don't know if you remember, Nancy, that before her rugby career, Naya did run track, sprinted in college. So she was known for her running skills, her speed. But the Irish rugby player that she was chasing is known for her speed too. So you can imagine the pace of that run.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been like a 100-metre sprint, basically.
Yeah, it really was fantastic to watch. Again, do go to our Facebook page at WiSP Sports, because it really is a sporting moment. Well, we're going to turn to soccer now, football. I know we've got a few NWSL transfers to talk about, Nancy, but let's do the FA Cup final first, where Chelsea beat Arsenal. I know that was painful for you, but what was your summary of that game?
I mean, yeah, so it was kind of from a objective basis. It was an incredible kind of spectacle. So the game took place at Wembley Stadium. The attendance was around 41,000 people, which isn't a record for the FA Cup final. I think that was 45,000 a few years ago, but still pretty kind of averaging in the 40,000s, which is amazing. The atmosphere was great. It was kind of, you had the two ends, so you had an Arsenal end and a Chelsea end, which I think made that atmosphere really good. It was also the anniversary, so it was the 50th edition of the Women's FA Cup, like as a tournament, and the final, and then also the 100th anniversary of the ban on women's football in England. So it was a very kind of significant day. In terms of the football, for me, subjectively, it wasn't great. I think, the Arsenal team just looked they looked quite rattled by the occasion almost. They looked a bit didn't look too confident, didn't play well, which is very disappointing, seeing as they've been one of the best teams in the Women's Super League over here this season. And I think it was a bit of a shame in that if both teams were as good as they can be, it would have been a really fiercely contested match. But instead it was kind of just Chelsea all over Arsenal. It could have been 4 or 5-0 in the first half if it wasn't for the Arsenal keeper, Manuela Zinsberger, who had a player of the match performance. But yeah, Frank Kirby scored in the opening couple of minutes, and then Sam Kerr scored 2 great goals in the second half. And yeah, it was a Chelsea masterclass essentially. Arsenal didn't play well, Chelsea were great. yeah, disappointing for me personally, but I mean, as a match, it was a amazing result for Chelsea. And yeah, I think that's 4 trophies they've won. This FA Cup technically was last season's FA Cup, and it was just postponed because of COVID. So last season they won 4 trophies. So very, very dominant force in women's football at the moment.
And just to remind everybody, they do have a female coach, don't they, in Emma Hayes, Chelsea?
Yeah, they do. And she's so well respected because of what she's done at Chelsea. It's so refreshing to see the most successful team in women's football here managed by a woman. And she, I think the best thing about her is that she comes across so well. So she's been a pundit on the Euros, the men's Euros here in the summer, and just comes across so well in that she's so knowledgeable. She can kind of, explain what's happening tactically on the pitch to someone at home that, it almost in layman terms. So someone at home can almost feel like they know exactly what's going on the pitch because she explains it so well. So she's just such an incredible ambassador for women's football. And yeah, I mean, it was just another masterclass from her, really.
Well, that's terrific. Well done them. But Arsenal now needs to regroup. But they had some injuries too, didn't they? Not least of all, Tobin Heath is still on the bench.
Yeah, Tobin Heath has been out for a bit of time now. And I mean, we were previously saying it's obviously something a bit strange about it because I think initially they said it was a short-term injury. But I'd say that was probably about 6 weeks ago now, wasn't it? She's been on the sidelines for quite some time. And yeah, she again just kind of sitting up with the injured players. So I'm not too sure what's happening with that. But yeah, Arsenal have Barcelona in the Champions League on Thursday. So they have absolutely no time to wallow in that loss. They've got to kind of, regroup and go again. I don't think Tobin is going to feature in that game, but if she does, I'll let you know.
Yeah, do keep us posted. Now, Vivian Miedema, of course, is one of your star players, star forwards. Was she having an off day, or she just couldn't get through their defence? What was happening? Yeah,
she was pretty quiet. I think it was more a case of the team not really providing her with the opportunities that she kind of needed. But yeah, she. I think the whole team was having an off day, to be honest. There wasn't really. It just wasn't really clicking, and Miedema wasn't really given the opportunities. So there was kind of very little shots on target for Arsenal. And I think her kind of poor performance was contrasted by the performance from Sam Kerr at the other end of the pitch. He was just, could have probably scored 5 or 6 goals, but wow, still got 2 to her name and player of the match. So I think almost Miedema looked worse in comparison because he had such a brilliant striker on the pitch as well. And yeah, I'm just hoping Miedema kind of manages to re-find her scoring form against Barcelona.
Yeah, for sure. They're going to need her. Well, credit to Sam Kerr because she'd just come back from Australia for playing with the Matildas against those two friendlies against the USA, hadn't she? So she's been running around a little bit. Yeah, she really, she's, like you said, she was in America, I think flew back quite recently. Apparently the night before the match didn't have loads of sleep. And then, puts on a performance like that, I think is incredible. Australia. She flew back from Australia, right? Sorry, flew back from Australia, which is probably even worse than flying back from America because it's literally the other side of the world. Just incredible performance from her. Yeah. Well, what do you think of their chances against Barcelona? I'm not expecting anything. Not really because of what happened on Sunday. I think even if Arsenal had won the FA Cup, I still wouldn't rate our chances against Barcelona just because they are the best team in the world. They are sublime. So I'm not too confident. Yeah, we lost the opening, kind of the first fixture, the away fixture. We lost that 4-0. So I'm not massively confident of winning, but you never know. Football, you never know with football. You never know. It's a funny old game. Well, as I mentioned earlier, we've got a lot of transfers. It is the transfer season here in the US. They were the NWSL. And just to mention 5 players USWNT. I'll get it right in a minute. They are, well, actually, two of them are not on the roster right now, but let's mention those that we do know about. Abby Del Campo is going to San Diego Wave FC. Sam Mewis is going to Kansas City Current. And Ashlyn Harris and Ali Krieger, of course, they're a married couple, so they can't be split. And they're going from Orlando Pride to Gotham FC. And we're yet to hear full confirmation of this, but we understand that Alex Morgan is going to San Diego Wave FC as well. So some big moves, Nancy, there amongst those players.
Yeah, really interesting to see San Diego kind of start kind of filling out their squad. And yeah, some very kind of marquee signings there. So yeah, really interesting.
We're going to move on to some tennis news. We've got three tennis stories, haven't we? Would you want to start with the retirement of Johanna Konta?
Yeah, so a bit of interesting news from British tennis. I think especially as you're kind of seeing the rise of Emma Raducanu, and Konta's now kind of, gone out at the other end and called time on her career. So she's announced her retirement age 40. She had 30. Sorry, I don't want to do her a disservice. 30. She had quite an interesting career. I think it was quite tumultuous. I think there were times where she looked like she could do something really special. She was world number 4 in 2017 and then was actually the first British woman to rank in the top 5 since 1984. And she has also reached semi-finals in a couple of Grand Slams, including Wimbledon. So there was always kind of that potential that she could maybe do something, but she never truly fulfilled it, kind of never won like a major Grand Slam title. And she has now, since decided to retire. She's just said her tank, kind of emotionally, mentally and physically, she had kind of finished with tennis. I know there were some reports of her having maybe a few medical issues as well, which kind of forced a retirement. But yeah, I think in terms of British tennis, she's definitely been one of the biggest names playing here. And I think, she can look back on her career with a lot of memories, and she did hit, to be in the top 10 in women's tennis is incredible. So you would say it was a successful career. And yeah, just wish her the best in her retirement.
Yeah, definitely a successful career. Yeah. And she says she's not going to move away from the game necessarily. She's just going to stop playing at that level. So who knows? She may be coaching. She may take up another role in the sport. And if we hear about it, we will let you know. And you mentioned Emma Raducanu. We're coming to the awards in just a moment, but there's a story about the Australian Open that is interesting. We've got a withdrawal already of note.
Yep. So Bianca Andreescu, the Canadian tennis player who won the US Open in 2019. She's announced that she's going to miss the Australian Open. Interestingly, this is kind of almost like a COVID situation. So she's kind of said, again, kind of talking about physical and mental challenges. She said she spent multiple weeks this year in isolation, quarantining because of COVID, and obviously the traveling around to different tournaments. I remember she was one of the players at the Australian Open at the start of this year that was was part on one of the planes that there was a positive COVID test, and then they had to spend time in super isolation in a hotel. Yeah. She was one of those players involved in that. I think her coach or something even tested positive for COVID. But she said it's that those weeks spent in isolation have affected her both mentally and physically. She's also revealed that her grandmother spent several weeks in intensive care due to a COVID infection, and that really kind of hit her hard. And currently she doesn't really feel like herself when training or playing matches. So she's not going to start her season in Australia at the Australian Open. And I think kind of take some time out. I think it seems like the Australian Open is probably at this stage quite far away in February. I think it's more a case of to start training, you'd probably have to be looking at the end of this month and then getting out to Australia. It's looking like I'm not 100% sure what the rules are going to be, but it could be quite likely that you have to quarantine. So, you know, it kind of makes sense, I think, to announce it now. And yeah, Andreescu's she obviously won the US Open in 2019, but has really struggled with injuries since then. And I think hasn't really kind of got back to the player that she was when she won the US Open in 2019. So, yeah, I hope that this kind of period away really helps and she can come back kind of, in the form that she used to be at.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll keep an eye on that as we build up to the Australian Open. It will be here before we know it. We're going to move to a couple of stories that are off the field of play now before we get to our awards season news. And that first story comes from judo, which was a pretty shocking story that came out of France last week, Nancy.
Yeah, so this is about the judoka, the French judoka Margot Pino. She accused her partner and judo trainer, Elaine Schmidt, of punching and attempting to strangle her during an altercation, I think the weekend before last. And Schmidt was arrested. He denied the allegations and he was also acquitted in court. And the judge said there wasn't enough proof of guilt for the prosecution to proceed. But I think when you look at this story, you like physically look at it, I think what's obvious is Pino has two really big black eyes, and there's other kind of images of her on social media where she's got a big kind of egg-shaped lump on her head where she's obviously kind of been hit. So I think the idea, that there's kind of not enough proof of guilt seems a bit ironic when you've got, her face is literally kind of is the evidence, if that makes sense.
The evidence, absolutely, staring you in the face.
Yeah, and she said she tweeted after the result, the verdict, the acquittal, and she said, what was missing, my death at the end, perhaps. And then she also said, it was probably judo that saved me. And my thoughts are also with those women who can't say the same. So, yeah, quite a very kind of shocking case there. And I think, you've previously said to me, it's kind of like, what will it take for women to be believed? Yeah.
That really shook the judo world for sure. That did, but we wish her well. At least she's bringing public attention to this, and if there's any more developments, we'll keep you posted, because I think they're appealing. That was my understanding. I think her defence are appealing against that. Decision. Another political story. We can't have any sports desk without a news desk without a political story, Nancy. And this is a story that's sort of following on from Peng Shuai, the Chinese tennis player, the WTA now boycotting China for tournaments, and now the US have announced a diplomatic boycott against Beijing for the Winter Olympics.
Yeah, and that essentially means that no politicians will go to the games. I think the White House has made it clear that athletes will still be able to compete, and that the politicians will be cheering them on back home. I think, so the boycott has it's been kind of something that's been discussed, I think, for quite a while. I think obviously there's been a change in presidency in the US. I think Donald Trump seemed to be against the boycott, but since Joe Biden has come in, that kind of view has changed. So yeah, they've announced the boycott, and like you said, I think the Peng Shuai story has escalated the calls for a boycott, but then there was also kind of other concerns about human rights abuses in China. I think particularly the allegations of treatment of Muslim minority groups in the country. Yeah. That is kind of why they're doing it. China have responded and called the boycott political manipulation. That would have had no impact on the games, as no invitations had been extended to US politicians. So it's got a little bit kind of back and forth now.
Bit of a
but it will be interesting, I think, to see if other countries follow suit. Like I know the UK here, it's going to be considered. So yeah, it will be interesting to see. But I think kind of the main thing is, you know, when you see stories like this, you kind of immediately think like, oh, is that a full boycott? But at this stage, it's just politicians. So yeah, the athletes will still be there and still competing.
Yes, just diplomatic. But we'll keep you posted, and we will be keeping an eye on other countries to see if they follow suit as well. All right, as I promised, we've got some award season news for you. We've got 3 stories. Nancy, go for it.
Yeah, so award season. So I'll start with the one I was at yesterday. So might as well start with that. So it was the BT Sport Action Women Awards.
Does that mean you had to dress up in all your finery?
Yeah, it did actually. It's the first time I've done that in a couple of years actually, because of obviously COVID put a stop to all of that. But it was a really good evening. It was at the BT Sport Studios in Stratford. It was hosted by Claire Balding, and there was it was one of those evenings where you're kind of looking around and you're like, wow, everyone here is very talented at what they do. So yeah, it was there weren't too many categories. It wasn't kind of really long and over the top, but it was Action Woman of the Year, Rising Star of the Year, Team of the Year, and then there was also Lifetime Achievement Award. So the BT Sport Action Woman of the Year award went to Emma Raducanu, which I think was quite kind of always going to be the way it was going to go, because obviously what she did was so just unbelievable and unprecedented and incredible. But yeah, she was up against cyclist Laura Kenny, jockey Rachel Blackmore, who's again had an unprecedented year as well, paracyclist Dame Sarah Story, weightlifter Emily Campbell, and para athlete Kadina Cox. So there was it was very tough competition for her. But yeah, Raducanu won the award. Chelsea footballer Lauren James won the Rising Star Award. Chelsea also won Team of the Year after, as I was discussing earlier, a very trophy-laden season. And then Paula Dunn, a former Olympic sprinter who is now in the coaching setup for the British Paralympic team, she won the Lifetime Achievement Award. So yeah, it was a really, really nice evening, and I like that this award ceremony is specifically focused on sportswomen, because it's kind of almost, you know, elevating it up and giving it a completely different platform to awards that also includes male athletes as well. So I quite like that, and yeah, it was a good evening. Super.
Yeah. I like this rugby award, though. The first coach of a women's team to be named World Rugby Coach of the Year.
Yeah, this is amazing. So, yeah, Simon Middleton, who's coach of England's women's rugby team, named World Rugby Coach of the Year. And yeah, like you said, the first coach of a women's team to win the award. So I think that's really, it's really kind of groundbreaking. It's really easy to see why he's won it, though. So the Red Roses, they've ended their second successive year unbeaten. They've won 18 tests in a row, and as we've talked about on this show a few weeks ago, they got 2 back-to-back wins over world champions New Zealand, and it wasn't just it wasn't like close. It was, you know, they were dominant against New Zealand. And then England also won the Women's Six Nations this year as well. So it's quite easy to see why he won it. But yeah, it was just really nice to see kind of the women's game, kind of recognised in that way. And obviously it's quite a groundbreaking time for a women's team's coach to win it. And yeah, I'm sure that obviously the World Cup, Women's Rugby World Cup next year, and Middleton is going to be hoping to add another trophy to those accolades as well.
Yeah, congratulations to him. That's absolutely wonderful. And to the Red Roses, as you say, they are on a roll. Now, final story in amongst our award stories this week is something we talked about last week or the week before, about the nominees for this award. And definitely this one woman was on that list as a favourite.
Yeah, Elaine Thompson-Herah, the Jamaican sprinter, she was named Female World Athlete of the Year. Again, very easy to see why. Had an incredible Olympic Games, winning the women's 100 metres, the women's 200 metres, and then getting another gold medal in the 4x100 metre relay. And I think it was just the nature in which she won the 100 and the 200 metres. It was, both races were absolutely stacked with talent and had people like her compatriot Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price, and she ran it in 10.61 seconds, which is a really good time. But then after the Olympics, ran her first post-Olympic race in 10.54 seconds, which is getting very close to the world record of 10.49 seconds. And I was watching the awards when they announced that she'd won, and she said to Sebastian Coe, the president of World Athletics, that she thinks she can get that record. So, and I'm sure she can as well. So I'm really looking forward to next year and seeing, Commonwealth Games and the World Athletics Championships next year. So I'm sure she'll be really going for it then.
Yeah, and that's going to be in Oregon and the World Athletics Championships. If you're thinking about following them, head over to Oregon, because it's going to be a fantastic competition. I'm almost tempted to go myself. How about you, Nancy?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's that summer is Commonwealth Games and the Women's Euros here. So I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to fit it in my schedule, but maybe. You never know.
Yeah, you've got plenty going on over there, that's for sure. All right, well, that wraps it up for this week. I do want to mention, though, as we said earlier, Naya Tapper and Ilona Maher are two rugby players who had a fantastic tour down in Dubai recently for the Dubai Sevens. They also co-host the Leah's Den podcast, which is coming to its season finale this week, and that comes out on Friday. And if you're a rugby fan, you do not want to miss this, because their guest in the season finale, drumroll, is none other than Fiadra Knight, the legend that is Fiadra. She's going to be their guest, and that's going to be an awesome conversation. So look out for that. That will drop on Friday of this week. As always, you can find the show notes for this episode and others in the series at wispsports.com with the links to all the stories that we've covered. You can catch up with us on social media at Wisp Sports, on all the social media channels, that is. And don't forget, if you listen on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, you can leave us a review and a rating. That will always help others find the show, and we do appreciate that. Nancy, just remind everybody how they can find you on social media and where they can read your stories.
Yep. So on Twitter, I'm at Nancy_Gillen, and my Instagram handle is NancyGillen_sport. And then everything I write can be found at Give Me Sport Women, which is www.givemesport.com/women's sport.
Fantastic. All right. We'll be back next week with more news from around the world of women's sports. Until then, thank you for listening.